Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the free Assange online visual series. My name is Taylor Hudak, and I am joined by my co-hosts, Andrew Smith and Steve Poikinen. So some stats for you guys, just to remind you, it is 57 days until the start of the second round of Julian Assange's extradition hearing in London. And it is day 3,393 since the beginning of his illegal and arbitrary detention, and also 346 days of the trafficking of Julian Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy in London to Belmarsh prison. Also, this follows a $4.2 billion IMF loan to Ecuador. So guys, of course, we typically aren't streaming on Monday nights, but as we have said in the past few weeks, we will be holding additional vigils because of this coronavirus and this corona crisis. There's a lot of time on our hands, and so we're going to use that for good, and we are going to talk about Julian Assange and related issues, and then also the coronavirus as it relates to some very frightening overreaches of government power. Now, today specifically, we will be talking about some measures that Assange's legal team is taking to ensure that he is out of Belmarsh prison, where he is really unsafe health-wise. And then also, too, we are going to be discussing the latest press conference to come from Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, who's really putting the UK on lockdown and further restricting the rights of UK citizens. Before we get to all of that, I want to open it up to my co-hosts, Andrew and Steve. Guys, what do you make of this? It seems like every single day things are changing, we're learning more information, and it seems like there's quite a few people out there who are really on board with these very intense and strict measures and our rights being taken away. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you make of all of this?
So I honestly think it's super draconian. Like if you just look at the way that laws are being changed, like the Earn It Act, like the dismissal of the potential dismissal of habeas corpus that's sitting there on the, I believe it's in the House right now, not quite to the Senate, but just the way that they're bringing out bills to restrict liberty while at the same time ignoring any type of relief program, ignoring any type of testing program. It's insane to me. What about you, Steve? You're muted, bud.
Hey, Steve, you're still muted. There you go.
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more because I've been doing more content through Solo News Day. But you're right. We've known for a couple of decades now that our government gives about as much a damn in regards to our rights as they do to our collective national health, or as they do to protecting open space or not polluting the air and the water. It seems to be an incredibly irrational response to a relatively, I don't want to say minor and dismiss people who are like sick, but this isn't the Black Plague. This isn't the Spanish flu. This isn't, it's not traffic deaths. It's not deaths through alcoholism. We're seeing a widespread, over-the-top response, and a government that is already rolling headlong into fascism, trying to grant more and more and more emergency powers. And this isn't, yeah, Andrew mentioned the Earn It Act. Absolutely. That's going to kill end-to-end encryption for private citizens under the guise of it's for the children. We're protecting the children. And that's absolute bullshit. We can get into what the Justice Department is trying to do in a little bit, because I do want to cover Julian's legal team seeking bail, finally. But it's a classic problem reaction solution. And it's getting harder and harder to deny that this wasn't a man-made problem. the reaction is to sell fear and paranoia. That's working. And the solution is going to be, if you let us erode what little civil liberties you have left, we'll make sure that the Rona don't get you, even though it's going to get you anyway. It's a cartoon.
And it even goes down to the municipal level. Like, I called a bunch of city councilmen and local officials today and was just talking to them about the response of the government. And literally all they are is confused because things literally change every single day. The governor does a call with every mayor and council president throughout the state sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock every day. And then the council has to figure out a time between 3 and 4 to get together to discuss the implementation in the city. Half the time they don't have like full and proper documentation at the time that they meet with the governor. So even like from the city official level, they're slow rolling out these changes and just causing like predetermined chaos to try to solicit responses, not just from people, but also from cities saying, we don't know what to do or how to handle this. So it's just crazy the way that even the things that they're doing good, it turns into breaking down the process to have people ask for the larger governmental institutions to take more control.
And Andrew, I know you've started an initiative to really combat this, and you've been very proactive in doing so, and I want you to have the opportunity to discuss in a greater depth the actions that you are taking right now. But before we do get to that, we did learn earlier today that Julian Assange's legal team is filing for him to be given bail. Now, remember, guys, Julian Assange right now is in Belmarsh prison. However, he's being held on remand. He has already served his sentence for breaching bail. So he's basically being held as a political prisoner at this time. So hopefully the judge or whoever has the power to issue him bail will do the right thing and will do so in this case, because we know that Assange is in poor health at this time. He has been for quite a while now, and his chances of contracting COVID-19 is increased because he is in a prison and because he's not well. So we will learn on Wednesday more details about that, whether or not the judge will make the right decision in this case. Steve, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that there's a legitimate chance that Assange could be let out on bail because of this COVID-19 crisis?
I mean, we're going to have to see if the UK is interested at all in not being responsible for a soft genocide, because this virus is going to spread through the prison system. Per the article that is up on the Watchdog by our friend Tarek Haddad, lawyers for the Australian National will argue he's vulnerable to COVID-19 outbreak in making a bail request on Wednesday. That Andrea Albert, the president of Prison Governors Association, warned there will be deaths in UK prison as a result of the pandemic. The Howard League for Penal Reform wrote to the Ministry of Justice suggesting actions that could be taken to protect inmates and staff given the unhygienic prison conditions. And article notes that both the U.S. and Spain have been releasing low-risk offenders, even if it's on a temporary basis. They're slapping ankle monitors on people and whatnot. 85,000 people in Iran were released from jail last week. If Iran, which is supposed to be, a brutal theocratic regime who, barely values their own lives, let alone the lives of their citizens, can release 85,000 prisoners. It is mind-boggling to think that while other Western countries are taking steps to reduce the risk of this virus inside their prison systems, that the UK wouldn't follow. It's not like they can't stick the guy in a hotel and put an ankle monitor on him. I would prefer a dismissal of all charges and immediate repatriation to Australia. But even in a limited sense, it's imperative that he be removed from Belmarsh and seek medical treatment for the myriad things that he's been subjected to, not just since he's been to Belmarsh, but over the last better part of 10 years since he began to practice social distancing in the Ecuadorian embassy.
Because we even know during the Ecuadorian embassy, he was having lung issues and respiratory problems. That's a well-documented thing that's out there in regards to him. So the fact that this is a respiratory illness that is literally causing the entire nation of London to go, or the entire nation of the UK to go into a complete lockdown, the simple fact that they're still allowing someone who only charge is political offenses in the United States for publishing factual information that embarrass the power elite. It's dystopian. It's as Orwellian and dystopian as you can get, because while they're cracking down on free association through the coronavirus, forcing people indoors, we're also having the crackdown on a free and open press. And it's literally a 1-2 punch against our First Amendment that, at this point, anyone aside from the people watching right now aren't really prepared to even comprehend that this is going on.
Exactly. And just for everybody, to be clear, if you did not see this happen earlier this evening, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson put the entire nation, the UK, on a lockdown. So their rights are even further prohibited, if you want to call it their rights, but their ability to roam freely has been severely prohibited at this point. And then also what I found to be particularly disturbing that we are seeing not only in the UK, but also in other states throughout the United States, is that the police and law enforcement does have the right to intervene if people are congregating in large groups. And when I say large groups, of course, that varies between state to state, but specific to the UK, you are not allowed to be within a close proximity of just one other person. So groups of 2 are prohibited unless you are living with that person, which I think causes for a whole lot of other issues to arise as far as, do you live with this person? Is this person your son or daughter? That sort of thing. It just puts a really unrealistic sort of pressure on the police to have to really intervene in people's personal lives. It's extremely disturbing. As far as the specifics of what Boris Johnson laid out, maybe we could pull that up for our audience so they can see. I know that travel outside of their homes has been greatly restricted to just basic necessities, and you can only go out to get food. You can exercise, but 1 time a day. So, I mean, this is some really scary stuff, and I think it's foolish at this point to believe that this is it and it's not going to continue on. I see these measures increasing over time. So right now on your screen, this is the address to the citizens of the UK by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We'll play that for you guys.
And this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. And so tonight, I want to update you on the latest steps we're taking to fight the disease and what you can do to help. And I want to begin by reminding you why the UK has been taking the approach that we have. Without a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope. Because there won't be enough ventilators, enough intensive care beds, enough doctors and nurses. And as we've seen elsewhere in other countries that also have fantastic healthcare systems, that is the moment of real danger. To put it simply, if too many people become seriously unwell at one time, the NHS will be unable to handle it, meaning more people are likely to die, not just from coronavirus, but from other illnesses as well. So it's vital to slow the spread of the disease, because that is the way we reduce the number of people needing hospital treatment at any one time, so we can protect the NHS's ability to cope and save more lives. And that's why we've been asking people to stay at home during this pandemic. And though huge numbers are complying, and I thank you all, the time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households, that is why people will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk, cycle, alone or with members of your household. Any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person. And travelling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. These are the only reasons you should leave your home. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should.
I'm gonna stop that there for a second and see what you guys' initial reaction to that is. Please go ahead. Let me know what you think there.
So, I mean, it's literally describing the new prison state in the United Kingdom. You're allowed to go out in the yard one time a day for a few hours, and then you're back in your cell, in your pod with your other housemates. It's literally as Orwellian as you can get. And for me, British people can sound one of two ways. They can either sound very intelligent, or they can sound like complete buffoons. And this guy sounds like a complete idiot, because he's sitting there literally trying to make it sound okay that they're going to force people into their houses where you can exercise once a day. You can walk outside one time a day. If your friends call, tell them, no, sorry, I can't go. The government said so. And if they don't expect some kind of pushback from this and some kind of resistance, then it's going to be pretty crazy, because in the US, we already see them saying that they're going to use the intelligence community and their big tech allies to monitor social gatherings and social distancing. And I don't know about policies being passed in the UK, but I can assume that they'll have something relatively similar. And what that means is that these big intelligence agencies are going to make a shitload of money. So while we're seeing the markets collapse around the world, while we're seeing this economic devastation, and then no relief packages being offered to people, we're seeing the tech community and their dystopian intelligence allies step up like, oh no, we can do this, but they're not going to do it for free.
Exactly. I also worry too about so despite the fact that this is, of course, very authoritarian measures that are being taken by the UK government and by the US government, but I worry about, so they banned meetings between 2 or more people, and I worry about the long-term consequences that has on somebody's frame of mind and psychologically, because over time, to be isolated like that and to have to distance yourself from loved ones and from friends and from other humans has to be hugely devastating on one's mind and has to present serious psychological consequences in the future if this is going on for a prolonged amount of time. I think that would even be considered, in extreme circumstances, a form of torture almost. And the fact that the government is telling people how to behave, as you had outlined, Andrew, the fact that Boris Johnson's saying, well, if your friends want to get together, tell them no, because the government said so. Everybody should be standing up and should be vocally against this and should be showing their disdain for these sort of policies. I understand people are getting sick and this is a very serious virus, but the response here, guys, is completely disproportionate in my opinion. I just don't, either there's something that is known about this virus that we just do not know, or the governments and those in positions of power are taking advantage of a situation in which people are extremely, extremely fearful. Therefore, they're likely to accept some very authoritarian measures that their government would want to pass and put through that they normally would not accept.
Well, it's social conditioning. At the end of the day, it's a way for them to get people to behave the way that they want them to. They use fear to shut down certain portions of your brain, so that way you're like, what can I do? What's going on? I'm not even sure what's happening in the world. And then your big brave government steps in, slaps you with a billy club and says, get in your house because everyone's going to die. That's insanity. There's people in the UK that don't even know if they're allowed to go to work. There's businesses in the UK that don't even know if they're allowed to be open starting tomorrow. And it's something that's really no different than what we're seeing here, like in Ohio, where we now have our shelter-in-place orders in, where it's essential service and travel starting tonight at midnight. just as Tuesday clicks over, essential travel and essential services only. Does that mean when I drive home at 2 o'clock in the morning after we do our Wednesday vigils that I'm no longer performing an essential service? Because what's going to happen at that point? Or do I just have to quarantine myself every Wednesday evening after that because I'm not traveling for an essential service at that point?
Steve,
Yeah, I'd throw a cot in the office.
Why don't you weigh in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would totally throw a cot in the office on that. So here's the thing. It's going to be really, really easy for UK police to pick off the small number of people that violate the two people rule. The reason they want you to be 6 to 10 feet away is so that your data will ping off of each other and you'll still be able to transmit your location. I missed that mug. God damn it, Andrew. Next time. There will be a next time. I bought that mug at a thrift store in outside of DC because it says St. Petersburg on it, and it was my Russian mole coffee mug for the week that we were in DC. At any rate, to call it disproportionate is being incredibly diplomatic, Taylor. It's nothing short of totalitarian. It's nothing short of what a global dictatorship would look like. I'm going to go back to the clip and we'll listen to this absolute Muppet put words out of his freaking cake hole.
You should say no. You should not be meeting family members who do not live in your home. You should not be going shopping except for essentials like food and medicine. And you should do this as little as you can. And use food delivery services where you can. If you don't follow the rules, the police will have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings. To ensure compliance with the government's instruction to stay at home, we will immediately close all shops selling non-essential goods, including clothing and electronic stores, and other premises, including libraries, playgrounds, and outdoor gyms and places of worship. We'll stop all gatherings of more than 2 people in public, excluding people you live with. And we'll stop all social events, including weddings, baptisms, and other ceremonies, but excluding funerals.
Are you okay? So let's kind of parse that a little bit, because now you're not allowed to buy clothes. Now you're not allowed to get. Let's say you're stuck in your house. You're on what is essentially, nationally mandated house arrest, and your only link to the outside world is your smartphone or your laptop, and it dies. It craps out. You're playing tic-tac-toe with your turtle, and your turtle wins, and you knock over the aquarium, and it wrecks your laptop. You can't go replace it? Is that what they're saying? Because Amazon is shutting down for everything but like medical supplies now, and its most essential items, whatever that needs to be. Is there the panic, the fear that this is going to cause the population of the UK is absolutely intentional. I don't know. I mean, unless somebody wants to talk me down from that.
No, it absolutely is. Because this is coming on the heels of an intelligence state that's never been removed. This is coming on the heels of national security acts out in the UK that have never been removed. Whenever we see emergency powers implemented, regardless of what country you're in, they don't go away. They just grow and grow in power until they can check all these little boxes off. Like right now, they're knocking out religion, association, and a free press. And how are they going to enforce this? With force, with the only mechanism the government possibly has to enforce anything, which is violence. And that's literally what he's saying, is if we see 2 or more people, we're just going to have to come crack some fucking heads. And then if you remember, this is something we talked about with Mohammed Almazi a while back. Just before Julian's trial, they rolled out a facial recognition system in the United Kingdom. So if you're someone who's a political dissident, or you're someone who supports WikiLeaks that turned out for that 10,000 person rally with Roger Waters, they have your face. They know who you are, where you live, what your phone number is, and what's going to stop them when all of your neighbors are locked indoors from a fucking police officer coming, busting your door in, and dragging you out because you're a sympathizer with a non-state intelligence actor. Like, this is insanity that this is even allowed to go this far and allowed to happen the way that it does.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But also, too, Andrew, what makes it very easy for these governments to put these sort of measures in place is that they have instilled fear in so many people. They've instilled fear in them. And I think people, long after this epidemic or this so-called pandemic goes away, I think people are still going to be afraid of the virus. And then also, too, another point that's been brought up time and time again, if we look back at 9/11, and kind of reflect back on the legislation that was passed after that took place, we know that our rights that are being taken away right now, we will likely not get them back, because if you look at what happened in 9/11, we did not get our rights back fully. And of course, the Patriot Act was just re-extended by U.S. government. So for those who are very happy to see the U.S. government step up and nearly declare martial law, because we're very close to that, and I think that it's not being too over the top to say that we very much may be headed there, unfortunately. To see this as a good thing is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. Steve, I'm sure you do share similar beliefs here on this issue, and that, you know, people are afraid, and it's really on us to be calling this out and to say that this is no, this is a too kind of a term for you, Steve, but disproportionate reaction to what's really happening and to the threat that is in place right now.
No, I agree, and if you were following Bojo there, it wasn't just we're going to close some essential businesses, but weddings are canceled, baptisms are canceled. You can go to a funeral, hooray! But all sporting events, do you hear how they're saying it? Like, they want to tell you that they're declaring martial law, but they know they can't come right out and say it. But we'll make sure that we have the police there, and if there's more than 2 of you gathered, we'll, go ahead and disperse you. I don't know if you've ever been dispersed by a group of cops, but I have. It's not, they don't just come up and ask politely. I'm gonna take it back to Bojo here. I think this is the one.
Well, while you're pulling that up, just quickly, New York City police said they would kindly or politely disperse of people in the streets if they saw large groups of people together, which we know, of course, it's going to be not kind or polite in which that happens. I think you made that point, Steve, earlier today.
And
so what are we looking at right now?
The last like 2.5 minutes of this announcement. Through sheer luck, I managed to pause this on Bojo making just the most indicative face of his entire political career. That's just wonderful.
Parks will remain open for exercise, but gatherings will be dispersed.
Oh shit, hang on. This isn't sharing right. We
do it live here, people. Just in case anyone was wondering, we're highly prepared, highly skilled, and doing it live.
Hey man, this is the first time that Jitsy's a brand new format. You're not my real dad.
Oh,
Here we go.
Well, that being said, a big thank you to all
Hey.
tech support here, Josh
We're
Benton,
back
for
on.
getting us a policy here.
And will do lives to their businesses and to their jobs. And that's why we produced a huge and unprecedented program of support both for workers and for business. And I can assure you that we will keep these restrictions under constant review. We will look again in 3 weeks and relax them if the evidence shows we are able to. But at present, there are just no easy options. The way ahead is hard, and it is still true that many lives will sadly be lost. And yet it is also true that there is a clear way through. Day by day, we are strengthening our amazing NHS with 7,500 former clinicians now coming back to the service. With the time you buy by simply staying at home, we are increasing our stocks of equipment. We are accelerating our search for treatments. We're pioneering work on a vaccine. And we are buying millions of testing kits that will enable us to turn the tide on this invisible killer. I want to thank everyone who is working flat out to beat the virus. Everyone from the supermarket staff to the transport workers to the carers to the nurses and doctors on the front line. But in this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together to halt the spread of this disease, to protect our NHS, and to save many, many thousands of lives. And I know that as they have in the past, so many times, the people of this country will rise to that challenge, and we will come through it stronger than ever. We will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And that, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
So there you have it. Boris Johnson wants to beat it with you.
rah rah nationalism, go go us, is literally half of what was said in the last half of that. Just fluffy words to make you feel good about the fact that you're a slave. Like fluffy words to make you feel good about the fact that your governmental systems have failed. Fluffy words to make you feel good about the fact that if you walk outside of your allotted one trip out a day, you're done. They're gonna get you. It's insane to me because the
Well, speaking of the worst,
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of the words that they're using, did he say that we are all enlisted in this? And then you notice he says the people who are on the front lines. And I know that's a phrase that's commonly used, but of course you see sort of this like military language being used. And maybe I'm looking at it a little bit
not at all.
too closely here. But don't you find that a little bit peculiar? The start of this virus, since the weeks ago, they started using this sort of military-like language, and they started saying that we are on a